Hello, my name is Jeremiah Dukes, and today I'll be discussing expectancy violation theory. Expectancy violation theory is a pattern of feelings when something should happen or not happen. Judy Bergens summarizes expectancy violation as a pattern of anticipated verbal or nonverbal behavior. So the question I must present to you is, what would you do? What would you do, and what would happen if people challenge other people's space, not giving enough eye contact, or simply went against what people were expected to do with their behavior? Judy Bergen's theory of expectancy violation, she suggests that nonverbal types of communication that provides how expectations affect distance in conversation. EVT begins with a presupposition that people construct expectations or other nonverbal behaviors based on communication style. What we'll be looking at is when someone does violate an expectation, how that could bring about a both negative or positive effect, which triggers something, an arousal in someone that makes them aware of what the speaker is saying. One common assumption held by scholars that is somewhat correct, but Judy Bergen, she goes against it. Many scholars consider that if a expectation is violated, then it must be negative. And if an expectation is always followed, then it may be positive. As we turn to the studies, I went ahead and looked at a couple scenarios. The first one was by Ellen Betancourt and her colleagues who researched expectancy violations based on categories of people. The group's hypothesis predicted that the violation of expected behavior in their groups would lead to individuals giving an extreme positive or negative rating if the expectation was violated. In their experiment, Betancourt and colleagues read a couple of scenarios. The first one were all males, and they were both going for job applicants. They were rated on how well they spoke or how well how they didn't speak well. The in group were the whites, the out group were the blacks, and the expectancy was that if a black person spoke very highly, they would be rated higher than a white skillful speaker. And if a white speaker spoke broken language, they would be rated lower than a African American or a black applicant. In the second scenario, there were a college speech class scenario, and there were either football players or members of the speech team presenting a speech presentation, and they would either be rated as skillful or unskillful. It was about first impressions from the evaluators to pretty much categorize them. They were saying that the speech team members would speak more skillful than the football team, but if the football team player spoke skillfully, he would rate higher than the speech team member, and the same as the speech team member spoke more negative or spoke badly, they will be rated as rated more negatively than the football players. The result followed the predictions of the expectancy violation theory and showed that the football players were rated more positively if their speeches were skillful. And the speech team were rated more negatively if the football players' speeches were. And speech team members were rated more negatively than the football players if their speech was badly delivered. The next consideration that I took into effect was a social EVT's effect on social media and studying being unfriended on Facebook. Jennifer L. Bevlins and colleagues outlined how friends relationships are started through being requested and accepted by another persons to be their friends for an expected period of time. When these friends unilaterally canceled that friendship, they wanted to ask the other participant if they felt as though their expectations were being violated. They covered a multitude of individuals, and they found out that, according to the ratings, that females and youngsters, they felt as though they were not violated if the friendships were in. Females had something that was really interesting, though, and it was that even though they did not think of it as a big expectancy violation, they did feel more more hard against than their counterparts of being unfriended on Facebook. The research displays how EVT has had major influence on computer-mediated communication. The International Communication Association conference paper on EVT, which was my last study, this paper examined the results of EVT when an African American violates someone's expected political views. The study makes an assumption that most African Americans are Democrats or liberal. The paper discusses that they think that an African American audience would think that an African American comedian held the same political beliefs as them, and therefore hold him more favorable than a white comedian who was performing the exact same routine. The results were as follow. They were correct that the African Americans, even though the African American comedian, held conservative views, he was seen as more trustworthy, and he surprised them more than the white comedian, who, I guess, same routine, was not perceived as trustworthy or likable and even humorous. What this study shows is that it wasn't all about their political ideology, but had more to do with their political ideology and their ethnic group, which made them understanding. Now, the question that I was studying through this whole situation is, does EVT hold itself up in biblical justification? The two examples that I will use will tell you, yes, it does. When I think of Samuel, 1 Samuel, when he goes to anoint David as king, Jesse and him both think that the eldest son or one of the other sons would be right for king, but they were mistaken. God chose David because he saw his heart. It was when Jesse sent for David in the fields that God told Samuel, this is the one, anoint him. Another one would be the woman caught in adultery, with the Pharisees and the scribes coming to Jesus and saying, tell us what the law says. Jesus did not apply the law the way that they wanted him to apply the law, but in turn gave grace and mercy to the individual. What that shows was that they were expecting him to follow the religious beliefs of that day, but he did not follow the religious belief and gave the woman the grace that she the grace that she needed. Expectancy violation theory has been researched by numerous individuals and has prompted different facets of interpersonal communication. There are varieties of EVT. There's a variety of ways that EVT has impacted communication and will continue to be researched for years to come. Thank you for listening to my presentation.